Again, that's going to, I guess, depend on the nation and the region we're talking about. And here's the thing, I guess the first thing I'd like to say is what's happening. Here's the difference between Islam historically and Islam today. Mm-hmm. The continuity is that Muslims are creating problems. Okay? They did it historically, the violence and the intolerance and the supremacism. Okay? And it's happening now in the present. The difference is historically, like I said, it was the jihad of force. Right? They had no choice. No one was going to let them in. So Europeans fought tooth and nail, fighting to the death. Now, the problem is, I think you mentioned it earlier, or I don't know if it was you, Francis, but you talked about Muslims, how they're very weak right now. And, they're a weak force. Why are they a problem? And the answer is because the West makes them a problem. Or the specific country in the West. Let's say the UK. Okay? All the problems that the UK is going through, for an example, and not just UK, much of Western Europe, it's all self-made. Okay? And you know that because I can look at an Eastern country like Hungary, and it has none of these problems. Is that because Muslims tried to invade Hungary by force, and somehow the Hungarians resurrected John Hunyadi and they beat them back? No, they just said no immigration. We don't want it. And guess what? No problem. So this is, I think, and this is why a lot of people get upset. I remember I once wrote an article because a lot of people in the UK were complaining about, there's an Islamic invasion, Muslims are invasion. And I basically said, no, get your terms right. This is not an invasion. An invasion is when people come by force and they're trying to take it. This is an invitation. Okay. This is an enablement from your leaders. So I think it's very important. My point is I like to, when I look at a problem, not veer off kind of in tangents, but get to the heart of it. And the heart of the problem today with Europe and Islam, it's really not the Muslims. I often give this analogy where, I say, imagine a enclosure of zebras, and I all of a sudden decide to put a lion, and lo and behold, the lion starts killing the zebras. Who's really at fault, me or the lion? I think it's me. The lion's a lion, okay? The lion's going to do what a lion's going to do. Muslim's a Muslim. He's going to have the anti-infidel thing going on, the tribalism that I mentioned, okay? But why are they being brought in with all these massive numbers? Why are the native Brits, let's say, or Europeans in general, their heritage and their religion and their cultures being suppressed to make room for these people in the name of some sort of amorphous tolerance or, multiculturalism, which is obviously not working? So my point is, the ultimate, if you want to talk about trajectories, it depends really on the countries, and it's actually, in a way, easily fixed if the actual supposedly elected representatives of these various nations do the will of the people, but they're not. And that's really the issue. So I would tell people, your Islam problem is less about Muslims, and it's more about the people who are enabling and empowering them and bringing them in against your will. These are the people who have the same names like you, and they look like you, and they are apparently, ruling in your name, but they're obviously not. And it's become very obvious right now. So I think people should look at the ultimate source of the problem. Islam is a problem intrinsically, you can say that, but now there's an instrumental force empowering it, which is, like I said, why in other countries, Poland and Hungary, it's not an issue. And, it can be fixed, it's not going to be easy now, obviously, but something can be done if the actual elected officials cared to do it, but they don't.
So you've used the example of Poland or Hungary, and they're relevant. But don't you think part of it as well, Raymond, is, for want of a better term, white guilt? The British went out, we colonized a lot of these countries, and a lot of the Islamic immigration into the UK is from Pakistan and Bangladesh, both former colonies. So that must play its own role as well.
Oh yeah, the white guilt, but that is to me the most contemptible of all factors that really needs to go away. This white guilt, I never understand it. I did a recent study about, because we have Columbus Day here, and all these people get up and all hemming and hawing, all horrible Columbus and what he did to the natives, etc. In fact, and Muslims are doing this too. And my point is, talking about living in glass houses, all their heroes did far worse than Christopher Columbus. So my point is, whatever the white man's guilt, the same thing's been done to him and to everyone else. Okay, whites were enslaved by blacks. Whites were, conquered, and I told you Muslims, Moors, as they were known from North Africa because of their dark skin, went all the way to Iceland, very fair people, and enslaved them in the 1500s. And by England, there was a little island, maybe you know, called Lundy, which actually was a haven of Barbary pirates who would actually raid and enslave British people. So my point is this white guilt is really manufactured, and it needs to be, seen for what it is. If anything, I mean, being objective, I was just telling you that the colonial era, which is the white man, they actually, okay, you can say they conquered, the Muslim world, India, deep into Africa, but they actually brought good stuff with them. Okay, which is why the native population speaks well about that time. Like they brought science and technology and literacy, medicine, etc. Okay, now the other people we're talking about that conquered, including conquered Europeans, brought nothing but death, destruction, and slavery. Okay, so when it's all said and done, I don't think there's much for the white man to really feel guilty about. And I say this as a guy who doesn't think of himself as white, by the way. Okay, so I'm just trying to be as objective as possible. But see, the fact that this exists, and I'm glad you brought it up, just shows you how far gone so many white people are, that they're so caught up in something so silly that all these other peoples who are not white would never even think, and shouldn't think, of something like that to actually govern how they see the world, that, oh, my forefathers did something. So England is bringing Pakistanis in because they feel bad because they colonized Pakistan. I mean, that is just such silly and stupid thinking.
Raymond, and you use the example, and I mean it was a provocative example of zebras and a lion. And then there'll be people who are listening to this or watching this going, yeah, but I've got a Muslim mate, he's a nice guy, he's not like that. Isn't that just a bit reductive and unfair?
No, I'm not saying that every Muslim's a lion who's trying to kill you. What I'm saying is, though, let's go with, the most conservative estimate I've ever heard. I often hear like 10% of Muslims are radical. I mean, I think, and I've heard a lot of people say it's more than that, okay? But let's say 10. I think that's fair.
And I think it's important to delineate what does actually radical mean.
Okay, well, now we're going to go down another rabbit hole. But so radical, what it means, what people mean by that is this is the weird, crazy Muslim who's not practicing true Islam. He's doing this crazy, violent Islam. To me, radical Muslim is just a fundamentalist Muslim who's following his religion to a T, okay? And the moderate Muslim, in this parlance, which is not accurate, is supposedly the Muslim who's practicing good, true Islam. To me, the moderate Muslim who exists is actually the nonchalant Muslim who's not taking his religion all that seriously. So they exist. I do believe that these two distinctions exist. I just think the words are inaccurate, okay? It shouldn't be a moderate and a radical. It should be a purist and an observant Muslim, which is the radical, and the nonchalant secular cultural Muslim, okay, which is the moderate. And they exist. So now let's say these, let's say 10% are the observant radicals, right? And I give you that number because that's the smallest number I've heard from people who are serious, okay? So my point is, but when you bring in millions of Muslims, okay, what's 10% of that? I don't know what the population, let's say England is, but I know 4 million Muslims. Okay, so you have 400,000 radicals, right? So you have 400,000 who might act like a lion. And so what does that mean? I agree, the other ones don't, right? But you're taking a chance. It's kind of like saying, I'm going to give you a jar of candy, and only 10 out of 100, 10 are poisonous. Big deal. Take a chance. They taste good, right? Now, again, all of this, these are, like you said, reductive analogies, and I understand, and I do believe a lot of Muslims who come, especially a lot of them, like I said, come from an Islamic background, but they're not observant, okay? Yeah, I do believe a lot of these people come to Europe looking just for a good life, and whatnot, and are not necessarily dedicated to conquering and what I've been discussing. I get all that. But it's the numbers, and it's the fact that they don't assimilate, and the fact that if it's 10%, 10% is still a humongous number. If you said it's 4 million, we're talking 400,000. And again, I'm giving you the 10%. I'm trying to be kind of lenient here, but I think it's more. Maybe it's 20, 25%. And you know this because if you listen to what comes out of these mosques, including in the UK, it's the radical variety. That is to say, the accurate variety. So, so this is what makes this kind of a quagmire and not an easy thing, especially from the Western liberal mentality, which wants to help the underdog. And in fact, there is a lot of them are underdogs, but it comes with a risk. And the risk is what you see happening in the UK, which is once in a while a Muslim man gets up and stabs children and people and just drives his truck into some people.